Did you put Christmas on a credit card? Don't stress out about that extra holiday spending. SaveWithConrad.com can help you consolidate all of your high interest rate credit cards into one much lower monthly payment. SaveWithConrad.com has helped families just like yours save up to $800 a month. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket. And did I mention no payments until March? So don't make saving money a resolution next year. Make it happen today at SaveWithConrad.com.
Words are about to be spoken on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, presented to you by ad-free shows on the Podcast Heat Networks. I'm John Alba. That right there is the broken one, the woken one, the spoken one, the living legend himself.
Tag team GOAT,
Mr. Matt Hardy. What's up, man? Coming to us from the Hardy compound this week.
Yes, sir. Coming from the Hardy compound. Just traveled down to lovely Florida. Get a little more chilly than I expected last night, but was down in lovely Florida. And if you're watching this podcast right now, make sure to tune into AEW Rampage tonight as myself and my brother Nero and Mark Briscoe, who we are adopting into our brethren. We're going to have some words to share with the AEW audience. It's good, man. Back home, very much a quick trip, in and out. We went in yesterday, came back home early this morning. Just got back from being at the boys' jiu-jitsu lesson and whatnot. We went and grabbed some dinner. So yeah, all is good in this world of the living legend, Matt Hardy.
Speaking of this whole living legend thing, man, you guys got a lot of attention in the past week. There was a segment that aired with you guys and Private Party. Asserted your dominance a little bit. You gave them a t-shirt to admire your GOAT status with. Some people, it's got them thinking, Matt, that maybe some new beginnings are on the horizons for the Hardys in 2024. What do you think?
That's the goal, John. We're obviously heading in a new direction. Last night, after the Bucks of Youth returned, I posted a picture with myself and Jeff and the Bucks of Youth, and people were pretty fired up about it. I am looking for reactions, and Jeff is looking for reactions, and I'm very excited for everyone to see the segment that airs on the Rampage that happens on January the 12th. It's going to be a great segment, us and Mark Briscoe. And I think we might do some more business with Mark Briscoe. He is someone that we in real life we truly respect, and even professionally we respect him. Even the living legends, the tag team GOATs, respect Mark Briscoe because of the great battles we had with him and his brother. But yeah, I do think the Hardys are heading in a new direction, and I think it is really unique for Jeff because I think you're going to see Jeff talk about and like go into a territory that he's never really explored before. And I think that's going to be really interesting, really intriguing, really good, entertaining TV.
Well, it's like about time you guys realize your own equity, right? Your own value. You guys have traveled up and down the road for 30 years. Tag teams grow up wanting to be the Hardys. You guys have done them a service by existing.
We've done them a kindness, Sean. You're correct. And every time we do a Comic-Con, anytime we do any public signing, you were at WrestleCade, we signed for 7 hours. People come through. Every 3 or 4 people that come through, someone is going to say, like, you were my childhood. Oh my God, thank you for making my childhood great. You are living legends and you're still killing it. We hear that so much. So I think we've just decided to apply that to the new direction we are taking our characters in. And the most funny thing is, the best thing is when like the diehard fans who claim or feel they're the smartest and they get the ins and outs of the business, or they know what's going on more than anybody else does, or they have the correct idea. This is how the creative should go. Tony Khan should book it this way, or Triple H should book it this way, or whatever. Those guys, when they react to stuff and also like it gets underneath their skin, that still lets you know you can still do your job, you can play a role, and you can still even get the smartest of the smart fans, especially the ones who believe they're the smartest of the smart.
I think there were some people who saw that segment with Private Party and they picked up what you were putting down.
They were. I mean, there's a lot of people that do get it, but there's even more people that are online that don't necessarily get it, and they just think, oh my God, the heads on these guys. So it's gonna be fun to play around with. The big headed Hardys. Sometimes I refer to our new direction as the big headed Hardys.
The big-headed Hardys. I can get behind that. I mean, listen, sometimes, as Sheiky Baby would say, you got to humble them the old country way, right?
That's true.
And that's, Private Party needed to maybe, they come back, all that bravado, need to be humbled a little bit. And you gave them some T-shirts. I'm sure Zay was appreciative of the T-shirts, right?
I mean, it was Christmas was already gone. The new year was already gone, and we just, out of the kindness of our heart, we gave them ring-worn shirts, which are very valuable. That we could go sell those on a website at an auction to a fan for hundreds of dollars, and we gave it to them because we know we were their childhood, and they're two of the biggest Hardy marks in the world. So we're just being kind to them. I don't know why they would be bothered or upset about that. Especially we gave them a legitimate and authentic act of kindness.
You should sign some toys for them or something so they can put them in their home offices, or in Zay's case, his playroom.
Yeah, in the playroom for sure. I might give them some figures, so they could put them in their playroom. They could play with them maybe in the bathtub. They probably take a bath together every now and then. They sit down in the bathtub. They could, have Matt Hardy fight Jeff Hardy. Kind of like back at WrestleMania 25 when we were one of the marquee matches. They could have some fun with stuff like that.
That always struck me as more of a Daniel Garcia Zay thing, not so much Zay and Quentin, but perhaps it's totally possible that could, in fact, be the case. Well, I'm excited. I'm really excited to see where this character stuff is going. You mentioned the Bucks coming back. We don't have anything announced right now, but it sure seems, based on the inference on television, Matt, that the Young Bucks could be Sting's last match. In a hypothetical scenario where the Young Bucks are Sting's final opponent, what do they bring to the table as a matchup for him?
Oh, I say it here ad nauseum. And once again, to piss everyone off that are not on the Young Bucks train. I mean, the Bucks are truly amazing. I mean, they can get in the ring. They're so good. They know what they're doing. They can lead people that are a little older. Their bodies are a little more broken down. They can lead them to great matches. I mean, they're just so talented. They're really, really good. And they're truly underrated. Like, their actual work as a tag team is underrated. And I know a lot of people give them a hard time because they say, oh, well, they're spot monkeys and they do this and they do that, or they play politics because they're EVPs. I mean, they're both good dudes and they're both incredible professional wrestlers. And if that does end up being Sting's final match, Sting and Darby versus the Young Bucks, they're gonna tear the house down. It's gonna be great, guaranteed.
Yeah, and again, Tony Khan has gone on the record and said this, like, he's letting this last run be up to Sting, right? So these things are being done on Sting's terms here. And if Sting wants to face the Young Bucks as part of his last match, or if it's not the last match, as part of his last set of matches, it's clearly he sees some equity in them. He sees some value in them. And I certainly do too, Matt, because I think, hypothetically, if they are the last match, there are so many opponents you could have put out there for him. You could have put FTR out there for him. There's a lot of great opponents. You could have picked any combo, X and Y, put them together. Mm-hmm. But the Young Bucks as heels specifically are
which is where they're at their best.
Absolutely. They are just such shit eating grin heels where they're going to pull that emotion out of their opponents and really amplify the story that is being told. And if Sting has one more shot at being a superhero, who better to be against than people that are just going to bring that extra set of heat and emotion into the match?
Right.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with you, John.
You
and I were on the same page.
We are. Should I give my fantasy booking moment for this match?
Please,
I want to see.
Do.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, please do.
Ric Flair's at ringside, right? Sting is getting his ass handed to him. Darby's out. And Sting is wavering side to side, looking for like punching at air. And Matt Jackson and Nick Jackson look at each other. They look at Sting and they say, with Ric Flair looking right at them, they say, "Sorry, I love you." And then go to super kick Sting, super kick party Sting. 1, 2, kick out. Sting starts firing up. You get your comeback. Tell me that's not a moment. Come on now.
No, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. He can do that comeback, go right into a double Scorpion Deathlock, and have them both tap out.
I hope that the Young Bucks enter this match tan enough to face Sting.
Oh my God! Sometimes you have to just change it at a moment's notice.
I hope that they come into this match and their spray on tan is leaking onto the mat by the end of that thing. That's all I know.
That's my gimmick, not the Young Bucks. I'm the
That's
one with
true.
the leaky tan.
That's true. That's very true. Anything else on your mind in the wrestling world this week before we get into the main topic on this week's episode?
I just once again, I'm just so happy that wrestling is so healthy right now. I mean, WWE is doing great. AEW is still doing well, across the board. And once again, I am going to point this out. So Jeff made that comment whenever we did that bit that ended up having Private Party, and when it was all said and done, Jeff said someone needs to put us on Dynamite so we can boost the ratings. And there were so many insider fans that were upset about that, right? Said, "Are you kidding me?" This, that, and the other thing. So that Rampage, it outperformed Collision on all levels, and that's a Matt fact, not Matt fiction. I mean, it did more viewership, did a better demo in like 18 to 25, 18 to 49. I mean, it defeated Collision across the board. And yes, Collision is on Saturday, and it had tough competition, no doubt. But it's a live show where no one knows what's going to be on it, so there's a lot of anticipation to watch it. Rampage was a pre-recorded show that aired at 10 p.m. on a Friday night, which is also not a fantastic time to have wrestling on, but it did really, really well. And the fact that we were on that show, and we kind of like with the anchored part of that show where we kicked it off, myself, Jeff, Mark Briscoe, and then myself and Jeff, we had that interaction talking about our win and the thing with Private Party. So we had two big segments on that show. And the fact that it did a great number is what led to myself and Jeff and Mark speaking again on this one. So, I think we'll kind of be, associated to some degree, but Jeff and I, our ultimate goal right now as the living legends, as the tag team goats, is to win the AEW World Tag Team titles. That is our end game. But it's going to be some fun interaction with Mark. And I think if you're listening to this early in the morning, as you should do, I appreciate everyone that gets up at 6 a.m. and puts this on, in their cars, they're driving to work. Check out Rampage tonight, and you're going to be heavily entertained by this Hardy's Mark Briscoe promo.
Very, very excited for that. We've got a unique edition of the Extreme Life because we've had this one requested by some fans over the past couple of years, which, by the way, we just celebrated 2 years of this podcast last week, and I'm very proud of that. Can't believe it's been 2 years, and we're so grateful to everyone who listens every single week. But one of the episodes that has been requested so much is taking a deeper look at the enhancement days of the Hardys. We've talked in the past, early episode, like episode 4 or something, or 5, about the Italian Stallion getting you some of your early jobs in New York. Well, we're going to take a deeper dive into those matches on this edition of the Extreme Life, and you'll tell some good road stories about those. I can't wait to hear those because I'm sure there's many I haven't even heard. Sure. But before we can do that, Matt, you know what I got to ask for. Please hit us with that Matt fact.
Matt fact: Matt literally started from the bottom of the wrestling biz.
Matt literally started from the bottom of the wrestling biz.
I feel like that's the perfect Matt fact because that's what we're talking about, right here, right now. We were two guys with no connections, had no idea how to get in pro wrestling. We just were two kids from a little podunk town in central North Carolina who had big dreams and aspirations, and we chased them down and somehow made them work. At least we made them half-ass work. I'm sitting here 32 years later, so they at least half-ass work.
I would say so. So let's turn the clock back to the early 90s. You guys are coming off your Trampoline Wrestling Federation days into Omega, trying to make a name for yourself. Did you have any concept of how you could end up potentially in a notable promotion like WWF or WCW or a young upstart ECW at that time? Was there any map or playbook on how to get there?
I mean, that rested all on my shoulders. I was the person in charge of that. Like the independent matches that we had, if we were able to film something like we would at our ECWF. That's the first incarnation of Omega. That's kind of what was called the East Coast Wrestling Federation in the beginning. You know, we would film those matches. If we would go to the Italian Stallions, we would try and have someone come along with us that would film us while we're doing PWF. And literally, once he offered to start taking us to be extras, do enhancement work at WWE, he wanted us to do all of his shows. But we were happy to do all of his shows, even though it was for free. Sometimes we get a hot dog or like a Coke or something. But like it was ring time and it was experience. And we were learning like terminology and the psychology and everything else from him and George South. So that made it worth the while. Our goal always was to end up at WWE or WCW or ECW when it was around. So I sent many tapes, many VHS tapes to WWE, to WCW, to ECW, and there's times that I would go out and I would go to shows. I remember I was in Fayetteville and I gave a VHS tape to Gary Michael Capetta, and I got to talk to him for a little bit. And I told him we were working with Stallion and George South and this, that, and he was like pretty genuine about it. And you know, there is that famous story. There was a VHS tape that I had sent to WCW and ended up at the power plant, and then they said, "Oh, we have these two Jack guys, and we need a good name for their tag team." I said, "Hey, what about this Hardy kid here who?" You know, on this amateur challenge, his name is High Voltage. I think that'd be a great name. That'd be a great name for these guys. I'm sure he didn't have a copyright or whatever. You know, so that was our goal. That's really all we knew to do to get in. You know, we tried to network and meet more people as we continue to expand and grow in pro wrestling and do more promotions and try and get ourselves out there. But like you know, our game plan in the beginning was just to keep hitting them with tapes and show them our improvement and let them see our work. And then hopefully we can come in and get an opportunity to be looked at.
How did you even know where to send stuff at that time?
Between asking people, there was a guy named Eddie Rainwater. So the way this all started too, like, I don't even know, I probably have talked about the story some, but like myself and Jeff, we were wrestling in our backyard, right? Boing, 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 boing on the trampoline. And then we met this guy, Kenneth Morgan, who was a carny, and he had built a half concrete ring. It was like hard as shit. It was like the hardest Japanese ring you could see, like concrete. And then it had a trampoline in the center. And we met two legitimate professional wrestlers who'd been trained and who'd done like TV jobs and whatnot. And it was John Adcock, who wrestled as John Savage. And then it was Eddie Rainwater, who they also wrestled together as the Black Dragons, I want to say, underneath the hood. They both had masks. So they came around and they had contacts of people that they knew in the business, and they would like suggest, "Oh, well, send it to this guy or send it here, or I'll ask this guy where you could send the tape." And that's kind of how we got some insight into where to send stuff.
Because it's not like you can just hop on Google and look up an address or shoot a DM on Twitter to someone.
No.
It's just the blind throwing stuff into the ether and hoping
Yes.
that someone... See, how much money would you estimate you spent over the years of creating tapes and sending them? I mean, you didn't have editing skills at that point. You had to learn all this stuff, right?
Yeah, I did it with 2 VCRs. That is how I put together my demo tapes. And we would always like try and update our reels of like us doing all these cool hot spots and like put a song to it, you know, whatever, maybe a Pearl Jam song or a rap song or whatever. So I did that, you know, I just kind of took it upon myself, and I would do it for myself and Jeff, and we were trying to either get a gig as, you know, singles guys or tag, whatever they would take. We were down for whatever, obviously.
Do you remember ever getting a response from the tapes alone?
The best response that I can remember getting is we had some, and we always kept these tapes with us, right? We would make these demo tapes, VHS, and I would make several copies, probably 10 of each one. And whenever we would travel and do shows, we always kind of like kept them on hand. So we had brought some tapes to Philadelphia to give the WWE, as we were doing extra work at this time, right? We're still enhancement talent. And I was going to give them our newest updated reel, so to say, on this VHS tape, so they could see it and like see our progress, how we've gotten better, how we're learning to be better overall or rounded workers. And I gave them a tape. Never really heard anything back from that. That was from Chief J Strongbow. They were just really happy always to have us come in. And they did often, which we were very grateful for, to come in and do jobs and be enhancement workers, because like a lot of the boys liked us and they wanted to work with us because they thought we would take a crazy bump, or they felt pretty confident we would do our best to try and make them look as good as we possibly could. So we left the show in Philly, and this was the night. Do you remember the night? I don't even remember what show it is now that I'm saying it, where ECW was there and they invaded.
They invaded Raw. Mm-hmm.
And they invaded Raw or whatever. So it was that night. We had left there and we went to a Hooters down on the river in Philadelphia. Do you even know where I'm talking about now?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we went down to that Hooters, and while we were in there, Raven, Sandman, and a couple other guys walked in. Blue Meanie was with them, I think. Some guys walked in and they came and they hung out, and then we ended up speaking to them. And then Sandman said, "Oh, I've got some stuff I'm going to be doing in the Middle East coming up." And Sandman was hammered while he was there too. The first time we met him, he was in it pretty deep, and he'd had that appearance at WWE. And they were asking us too, like, it's funny because Raven was very much said, "So how the guys in the back act? Were they mad? What was the reaction back there? What about the people in charge? How did they act?" He was like trying to get intel, just seeing what we could tell them, because they really tried to keep that thing on the wraps, right? They tried to keep that real low key. Not a lot of people knew about it. But then we gave Sandman this tape because he said he had some stuff coming up in the Middle East, and he wanted to take myself, Jeff, Marty, and Jason Arndt. He said, "If you guys are doing this, I'm looking for some more bodies, some guys that have experience, but they're young and they're healthy and kind of have some new stuff." So we gave him our tapes, right? So he has our tape. We're doing that. And Jeff and I, we're still living at home now, obviously. And we're staying in the basement. I had moved down to the basement because my dad just had, the upstairs. He had his room, and then we just set up the basement so we could kind of stay down there. And we kind of like had our own room, and we could go in and out as we please, because now we were, 16, 17 years old. And it was 3:00 in the morning, and we were downstairs asleep, and the phone's ringing. Dring, dring, dring. And like my dad comes and says, who the hell is this, you piece of shit? It's 3:00 in the morning. I got to get up at 5:30 and work. What the fuck? He said, "Hey, it's the Sandman. Yeah. Is Matt and Jeff Hardy there? This is the number they gave me. It was on the tape." And then our dad said, I don't know who the hell you are, but don't you dare call this time. And we like run, no, please, give us the phone. And like we get on the phone, he talks to Jeff a little bit. He was enamored with Will-O-the-Wisp too. He thought Will-O-the-Wisp was a cool gimmick. He loved how Jeff looked so different as Will-O-the-Wisp is instead of how he worked and wrestled and moved just as Jeff Hardy, Wolverine. And we talked to him, and he ended up watching this tape, and he brought us up to Philadelphia to do some shows with him. And then ultimately he was trying to set it up that he was going to go on this like 3-week-long tour in the Middle East and take us on it. That ended up falling through. But then he said he was also going to try and get us to ECW. And we were kind of talking to those guys a little bit. We kind of got in after Sandman saw that tape, and he was always real good to us after that. But that is the most success we'd ever got off a wrestling tape, I would say. And that 3:00 in the morning phone call was something too. Our dad was heated. He was heated.
It's so funny because you guys really would have been such great fits for ECW at that time. Like Paul Heyman would have been enamored with you guys. Right.
And because we were crazy, we would have done anything too, know, like healthy and young and ready to rock and roll and no fear. Like when, it's more Jeff than it is me. But when they put us into that adrenaline junkies, like fear is only a 4-letter word. These guys aren't afraid of shit. I mean, that's how both of us are, not afraid of anything, especially then when we're young and healthy. But I mean, Jeff being like an adrenaline junkie and trying to up himself and up the ante and up the stakes, raise the bar. That's how Jeff lives, especially when doing anything. So yes, we would have fit well in ECW at that time.
Yeah. But instead, your outlet comes through the World Wrestling Federation. The Italian Stallion starts bringing you guys up there. What do you remember it feeling like when you get that call in May of '94 that you're going to make your first trip up and actually get a match on WWE television?
Well, you were never guaranteed any match. We just knew we were going. So I had went and wrestled for Stallion as it was a tryout, right? In fall of 1993. So I went out there, I wrestled his guy that was like his enforcer. Very reminiscent, like I felt like for a small promotion of PWF, Professional Wrestling Federation. That was the name of Stallion's promotion. This guy was much like the JBL. He would take guys, that were new or maybe like take guys in the ring to teach them a lesson or toughen them up, and he wasn't afraid to be the bully. That's very much was this guy's role. His name was Maverick, right? So I wrestled Maverick the first time in, and I remember we were in there, and I locked up with him, and he'd said before, like, I had a couple moves that I was going to do. I was going to do a springboard moonsault. He was going to move. I was going to do a 1.5. He was going to move. I think the springboard moonsault maybe pulled up his knees, and then a 1.5, and he was going to move. So we had a couple things I said I was going to do, and we kind of figured out how we're going to go. He said, but besides that, kid, he said, just listen to me. He said, I'll talk to you out there. And I remember we got in there, we locked up, we got to a corner, and there was a break, and maybe he like patted me on the chest or chopped me or some shit. And then we go to lock up again. He says, all right, he says, grab a headlock. He said, tackle, drop down, get it again. And I was just like, whoa. And I didn't even know what a tackle drop down was. Like, I didn't know the official terminology of what a tackle drop down was. And I was like, okay. So, and I can't even do this now. I remember locking up with him because I'm just so programmed. If I'm going to grab a headlock, it's automatically like this, right? So I'm doing it, and I put on the headlock with the right. And I remember I grabbed him with my right arm, and I grind it because we didn't know at this time. You know, we've been wrestling for 8 months, and we've just kind of been doing our own thing, self-taught. And when I put him in a headlock on the right side, he said, what are you, a mark? And then he grabbed me and like dumped me on my head. And then I thought he was like, I think he thought I was like going to be down and hurting, like I was up before he was, you know, just even still sounding like it was going to be very hard to hurt me at that point, you know. And he did that. He like laid chops in, and I came back, and he's like, you know, how was this? Oh, it's good. It was easy. It was easy. And the guy said, oh, I felt bad. But there was a couple of his guys who said, I felt bad for you. He's real bad to take advantage of people and just beat you up. Are you okay? Because like he was trying to beat you up and rough you up out there to teach you a lesson. I said, no, man, I'm good. I'm good. So I did that. And then I passed that tryout, right? So after I passed that tryout, Stallion said, well, he said, kid, he said, you're really athletic. You've got a lot of potential. He said, but you need training. He said, because you don't know the terminology. You don't understand psychology, the way the business works. He says, what I can do is you pay me $3,000 and I can teach you all this stuff in, you know, probably 4, 5, 6 months. He says, how's that sound? I said, brother, I'm a broke kid with no money. I don't have anything. Thank you for this opportunity. And I would love to come back and wrestle for you again. But like, I don't have that kind of money to pay for training right now. I just don't. And then in 94, I get a call from this guy, Eddie Rainwater. That's how we got hooked up with Stallion in the beginning too. Eddie Rainwater and John Adcock, these two guys I was telling you about. So then I get a call from Eddie Rainwater, said, hey, Stallion is taking guys up north, brother. They're going up north to New York. You know, that's how the terminology always was then. They're going up north to New York, and he needs some more bodies. He said, do you have 3 more guys, you know, that could come try out to see if they could fit into this? And then I'll never forget, Jeff, Jason Arndt, Marty Garner, and Shannon Moore all went. And Shannon at this time was 13 years old. And they went and they wrestled, and they just even said, hey, kid, how old are you? You're like you're 9 years old, whatever. No, I'm 13. So obviously Shannon looked so young too. He was disqualified from going. But then Jeff had said too, Jeff said, I'm 16. He said, is it okay for me to go? Because they really liked what Jeff did whenever Stallion saw him wrestle. They knew he was very athletic, and we would do good up there for doing a job match. And he said, yeah, that's fine. He said, just get a note from your dad. I swear to God, he said, just get a note from your dad, and we'll give that to him. It'll be fine. And Jeff's like, oh, okay. And Jeff did. He had his dad like write a note and said, yeah, my son is 16, but I'm giving him permission to do this. And obviously when we got there, I remember we're filling out the paperwork, and Stallion comes up to Jeff and says, hey, make sure to move your birthday back 2 years. You're 18 now. That's how the first gig. Jeff and I was like, we were the same age, you know, the first couple trips at WWE.
That's right. You were twins.
Which is what we were twins, right? We were twins. So, you know, that's how we got these opportunities in the beginning. And then like he would put 14 people in a van, and WWE gave them money to rent a van, but instead of renting the van, I'm pretty sure George South used the church van.
And he pocketed the money.
And pocket the money. And then they would say, like, we'll give you, you know, put 2 people in each room, and they would put 4 people in each room, and they would pocket the money. You know, so they were doing good for those couple of days. And then like after we went and we did the first booking, we got paid $150. You know, I was like, whoa, we're getting paid $150, you know, and we did wrestle. We both wrestled on the first night we were there. But we're like, man, $150, this is unreal. And, you know, he drove 7 miles, you know, off into like a very, an area of wilderness. And he said, all right, boys, he said, if you guys want to go to the next town, he said, I'm going to need that $100 booking fee. He said, I'll bring everybody here and you owe me $100 booking fee. What the fuck? So from the 150 we got, and we did it 3 nights because they, at this time they were doing Raw. Then they would do a day with Challenge where they take multiple episodes, and then they would do Superstars. And each day we got 150, which in theory would have been 450 in 3 days, which is pretty damn good money for broke kids in Cameron, North Carolina. And then we ended up coming home with 150, and he came home with 300 of each one of our money, you know, each one of our monies. And there were like 14 or 15 people on every trip because we're in a van packed in there like sardines. So between pocketing like money from the van, whatever they were getting paid to bring everybody, taking a 66% booking fee. And then I've said this before, the whole big money Matt thing and the Wii fee, that was inspired by Stallion. A lot of the stuff I did with Private Party and that group of the HFO was very Stallion driven. But yeah, they had to be doing pretty good. So they definitely wanted bodies to always be coming back with them. But one of the flaws in Stallion's game is that once we started going with him, which was every 2 or 3 months, we stayed pretty busy, or maybe every 3 or 4 months. And then his guys who were like kind of weekend warriors, they were a little older, they weren't in great shape. They didn't have the great look that we did as younger guys. They didn't really use them as much. And then they told Stallion, said like, hey, if you keep bringing these Hardy guys and this Jason Arndt and this other guy, I said, and they're going to always get the booking and not us, then we're going to stop paying you for training. And that is what kind of caused a rift, because there was a trip where they were going to Georgia and Stallion left us. We drove to Charlotte to meet him, but he had like left before, just because there was a little bit of an uprising with his guys that did all of the shows.
So you decide to stick with it. Yeah, it's like at that point you have to bet on yourself, right?
Yeah, well, and what we did whenever we drove up there early in the morning, we'd all slept very little, and we're just like, we said, man, to hell with it. Like, let's go to Georgia where they're going. We knew the venue where they were going to be and everything else, and we drove there, and we went in backstage. We'd been around enough, like the security, the guys who were there, they knew who we were, and it seemed like we belonged, and we were able to get in, and we were able to talk to Chief J Strongbow. And I said, like, you know, I know you guys use us the most. Like, a lot of the guys like want, you know, myself, Jeff, or Jason to do a match if they're having an extra match, because they feel like it's going to be good and they know we'll like bust our ass for them. So I said, if you can just contact me, I said, because like Stallion has been doing this. He left us. We were supposed to come to this trip. Especially if you guys are interested in us and you want to use us, you can just buzz me. And like the 4 of us come together because we all live like within, you know, 10 minutes of one another. I said, so please just contact me and I'll do all this. And on top of that, Stallion was taking a 66% booking fee too, which I think that ended up kind of getting Stallion. It got him the boot, you know. And once again, we kind of bet on ourselves. And I just said like, okay, I'm going to step up and see what I can make happen here.
Well, sometimes, Matt Hardy, it pays to bet on yourself, and you can do that by heading on over to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, and we are so grateful to be pairing with the DraftKings Sportsbook app. It's an official sports betting partner of the NFL playoffs, and it's bringing you an offer that'll help make the playoffs absolutely electrifying. New customers can bet $5 on any game in the NFL playoffs and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Matt, I can't believe we're already at playoff time in the NFL season. I don't have to talk about crappy Jets and Giants teams anymore on SNY. But
Right.
it's such a great time of the year, right? When you're marching towards the Super Bowl and there's all that excitement.
Yeah, it really is. It is a very exciting time of the season. And I love that. I love it when it gets down to the nitty gritty and we're nearing the Super Bowl.
You have any Super Bowl picks here for us? Any teams you think could go all the way?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, right now I'm feeling good about the Ravens. I'm feeling good about the Niners.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be a Cowboys year, which the Cowboys haven't been good since you did your jobs in WWF.
Speaking of the Ravens, I do. Speaking of this episode that we're talking about, Trevor Goodell, which is Cameron Grimes, huge Ravens fan. So yeah, I could see some Ravens. I could get down with the Ravens.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I mean, they're really, really good. I mean,
yeah.
They're excellent. Looking at the spread right now, Browns -110 this coming week. The Dolphins and Chiefs. Dolphins -108 on the spread. The Chiefs 112. That would be interesting to see how that plays out, because the Chiefs, man, just with all this controversy with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, it's stealing all the headlines over there. You never would have thought that would happen at an NFL game, but you can get in on all this action, guys. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HARDY. New customers can bet just $5 to get 200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code HARDY. That's HARDY. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. And Matt, you and I also want to share, we were fortunate enough to bring home the King of the Mountain Challenge Championship, which was set up among all the podcast heat shows. We were betting on the spread every single week, thanks to the DK Sportsbook app, and the extreme life of Matt Hardy took home the crown.
Jeff Jarrett is no longer the king of the mountain. Damn it. It's the extreme life of Matt Hardy.
That's right.
The kings of the mountain are Matt Hardy and John Alba.
That's right. I got to give a shout out. I got to give a shout out to the official Extreme Life of Matt Hardy betting consultant, by the way, Corey Brown, my brother-in-law, who was very helpful during the course of this. So shout out to Corey for helping the Extreme Life get the win, because he's a big DraftKings guy and he is on the app every single week. And the best part about it is, Matt, we are donating our prize winnings to a very special cause to us, the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
Yes.
We're going to be donating $500 on behalf of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy to them. Why'd you pick them?
Mental health. We've discussed it here. We've both dealt with it. It's a very important topic. It's something that so many people, not only in America, but all around the world, deal with day in and day out. And it's just a great cause. It's one of the most simplistic things you can donate to and have your money go to a good cause, because mental health is truly important. Mental health is health. So yeah, we're very happy to donate, and thank you very much for that prize and allowing us to donate it. We appreciate that, DraftKings.
Absolutely, very, very thankful to DraftKings. So go check out the app right ahead of the NFL playoffs and get your bets in, and you'll get something out of it as well. Let's get back to the action here, Matt. You get to New York officially May 23rd, 1994, for your first match, and it's against Nikolai Volkov. You've talked a little bit about this match. Before on the podcast. He beats you in 2 minutes and 31 seconds I apologize if I'm screwing up this pronunciation. Is it Struthers, Ohio, or Struthers, Ohio? Wherever that may be. If you're from that area, my apologies. But Nikolai Volkov beats you. Listen, man, that's your first WWF TV match there, and that's against a legend. Nikolai Volkov was a big deal back in the day, and you're getting that opportunity. What was that like?
It was also live, John.
Yeah.
It was live on Raw, so that the pressure was on. When I think about that day, I remember we had to meet Stallion at midnight in Charlotte, right? And then they drove all throughout the night, and then we got in at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and then maybe checked into the hotel that we we're going to stay in, and then drove to the building. We were there that day. My first impression of walking in, I'll never forget. This is coming shortly thereafter the Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon ladder match, WrestleMania 10. And I remember we walked in, and Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall, they were sitting there joking with one another and laughing and cutting up with one another, and just to have the realization of it's just how we do things. It's the same. It's true. Just to actually see the WWE behind the scenes, that, these guys are friends that go out and pretend to be each other's worst enemies. I mean, that was a big realization for both myself and Jeff. And it was just such a cool moment, you know. I wrestled against Nikolai Volkov, and I'll never forget Tony Gurria, who worked there. Oh no,
We're back.
oh, we're back. Okay, something just fell up on the wall. So Tony Gurria, who worked there at the time, I remember he came up and said, yes. He said, yeah, the Italian stallion said, you're a very talented guy. He said, you're going to be working with Nikolai Volkov tonight. And like his words are this. He said, it's going to be on live TV. He said, and considering it's live TV, if you go out there, if you fuck anything up, you will never come back again. You will never come back again. He said, so don't fuck anything up because it's on live TV. If you ever want to come back again, or you have a dream of trying to make it in this business one day, don't fuck up or you'll never come back again. And I go, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that was extremely intimidating, as you can imagine.
Nice nurturing environment there.
I was like, holy shit. And then 30 seconds later, Nikolai walks up and I go, hi, sir. My name's Matt Hardy, and I'll be working with you tonight. I'm just happy to do whatever you want to do. And he says, oh, don't worry about it, kid. He said, it's a wrestling match. I'll just call it out there. He said, and don't mind me. I fuck up every match. He said, no pressure. Don't worry about it. This is live TV, but don't worry. I fuck up every match, so we'll be fine. And I'm like, what? He just told me, like, if I fuck this up, I'll never come back. And Nikolai, like, was just guaranteeing that something was going to fuck up. So it was a very pressurized situation. And same thing too. He just literally said, like, this is going to be the finish. And whenever I do this finish, that's the end of the match. But besides that, just like, listen to me. And I want to say the only choreographed spot we had is I told him, if you throw me into the turnbuckle, I can jump up to the top and go to dive back on you and you move out of the way or whatever. It'll be like an exciting spot in the match. That was the only thing that was called in that match. And then everything else was just as is. Just listen to and follow the guy.
It's a 2.5 minute match. I know from my TV experience, something that's 2.5 minutes. I mean, rarely would I even ever get a segment that's 2.5 minutes in TV, but when it does happen, it goes by like that.
Oh,
did it feel like 30 seconds?
It felt both long and short.
Yeah.
Because it did go by pretty quick, but just the pressure of like not messing up made it seem a lot longer. You know, it was really like, I mean, I was very stressed. I was very anxious. And I'll never forget being nervous. And I was like very happy when it was over. Because there's one point I want to say where he does something where he like shoots me in to the ropes and I run off and he just like kicks me in the gut. And I think it's just like he shot me and he's just like, and I don't know what's coming, right? And I think he like kicks me in the gut and I take a back bump. And I was so upset and bothered by that. But it was one of those things like he just said like, oh, you know, don't worry about it. No pressure. I fuck up every match. Don't sweat it. We'll be fine. Just listen.
So what's the reception afterwards?
It was fine. I mean, when I came back, there wasn't like a big party like, oh my God, that was the greatest match ever. Everybody's just like, thank you. Thanks guys.
But no one told you fucked up.
No one told me I fucked up. And they did allow me to come back the next day. and the funnier part of this night was that Jeff, who was 16, wrestled Scott Hall. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you were. So the guy that was going to wrestle Scott Hall was one of Stallion's guys. And all of a sudden he like had a breakdown. And he said, I can't take that Razor's Edge. I'm afraid it's going to break my neck. It's going to break my neck. And this was like, he told them that I can't do that match because I have a bad neck. And they're like, well, why the fuck are you here if you have a bad neck? So he ended up not doing it. I think he was just afraid of that one move. I don't necessarily know that he did have a bad neck. I think he was just afraid of taking that one move. So then they said, oh, well, get that guy. And they pointed to Jeff, right? And Jeff's like, I remember he's like wearing these white tights. They told everybody to get dressed and just be ready just in case. Jeff's wearing white tights. He's very pale. And I remember he comes over to Scott Hall, and then Razor was just like so frustrated because he'd already like talked to this guy and now he's having to change shit. And he's just like, look, just do this. I'll fucking do this. I'll put you on my shoulder. I'll drive you into the turnbuckle and I'll do this. And I'll boot you in the head. This is just listen. All right, kid, just listen. And Jeff's just like so intimidating sitting there. And he was the first one out, 16 years old. And before me, like I was on the live show. So Jeff wrestled on a later episode, but he was early in the night. So he was the first one out. And I remember feeling so bad for Jeff whenever he went out and wrestled this match. And I'll never forget how just like Razor was kicking the shit out of him. He was very aggressive, and he was kind of telling him to get up a lot because Jeff was like almost overselling or staying down too much. You know, whenever he would sell something, it would look great, but he would like stay down too much. He would want to come back up. And then he did the deal where he put him on his shoulder and he drove him into the turnbuckle, and Jeff's legs were going down, but like one of his knees landed right on the post and it hurt his knee. And that moment of him going out there and busting his ass and like Razor beating him up very aggressively, he legitimately felt bad. Scott Hall came back and said, "Oh man, I'm so sorry about your knee. I felt bad about that. Sorry, I was very frustrated because this other guy, and it just changed last second. I hate that shit because I have a big match coming up later in the night or whatever it was." And they kind of bonded because of that. And then I even got to speak to him a little bit, and it was almost like a bonding moment between, you know, Scott Hall and the Hardys / kind of the Clique, so to say, because there was also a point where the Clique were sitting there and they were like looking at Jeff's knee and putting ice on it or whatever, the doctor, trainer, whoever was back there. It was much more limited staff than it is nowadays. And they just put like some ice on it. And I remember that like Kevin Nash said, yeah, he said, this guy does, he said, he kind of looks like Vanilla Ice with the haircut and all that. And, you know, then like kids going, bump, 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 you know, humming to the beat of Ice Ice Baby. And that moment right there, it kind of like became a deal where the Clique was like cool to me and Jeff at that time. And they called Jeff Ice from that point on until like we got hired and we were like legitimately there under contract. So yeah, it was an interesting day, man. It was pretty newsworthy. And also Jeff was destroyed because some of Stallion's guys that watched the match, they said, yeah, we heard people talking about that match. They said it's terrible. They're going to cut it from TV. It'll never make air. That was terrible. It was terrible. And Jeff was like, oh, and I'm pretty positive just the fact that they were jealous that they weren't booked to be in a match,
Of course,
is why they said those things to Jeff. And Jeff hated that experience. You know, he was very, very unhappy. Yeah.
And he was billed as Keith Davis. Was that the name of the guy that dropped
that
out?
Was yep. That was the guy that dropped out. It sure was Keith Davis. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. And that leverages you into a chance to face Razor at the next TV taping, the Wrestling Challenge, the following day in Canton.
The next night, yeah.
And how was that experience for you again to face Razor?
It was cool because he's like, oh, look at this. They give me the brothers. He said, you have another brother here? Am I going to run through the whole family during the course of the week? But he was cool. And once again, I remember when Jeff was there, he said, oh, how's your knee feeling today, Ice? You good, Ice? You know, very kind. They were very thoughtful. In this match, I remember he said, okay, maybe we'll do this. He said, if like I start backing to the corner, he said, like, poke me in the eye. And then as I'm selling, like, shove me in the corner, he said, and then chop me. He said, like, try and get 3 good ones. He said, if you can get some good, try and make them good, because I'm going to turn around and I'm going to hit you with 3, you know, and mine will be good or whatever. And I said, oh, okay, sounds good. And I was like excited for that because especially then I chopped a lot and it was a pretty good chopper. And I'll never forget, like, I thumbed him in the eye, turned around, and I like hit one like this, whoopsh, and then I drew back and came overhand chop, whoopsh, and it was so loud and it rang. And then I was starting to draw back to do number 3, and he said, not today. And he turned me around and put me in the corner, and he was like, boom, boom, boom. And I want to say he hit me with 3 or 4. And then I'll never forget, whenever we walked back through the curtain, Kevin Nash and Shawn Michaels were right there, and they realized, oh shit, he lit you up. Ah! And they were like, you know, just doing buddy, like, you know, joking with one another. And that was a great experience.
Dude,
I mean,
people don't understand. Chops fucking hurt like a lot. And chops are some of the most legit moves you can take in wrestling. I'll never forget when I had my match in Limitless in 2021. I'm facing Davienne. I mean, she is strong and she rips my shirt open. And the plan was for her to lay in 10. And she gets 5 in. And I mean, the adrenaline must have been rolling for her because she was, I mean, I was red as all holy hell could be. And I had to stop her. I covered up and went down because I was just like, I can't make it to 10. I'm a little bitch. I can't make it to 10. So you doing that to Scott Hall and him after just 2 starting to turn the tables on you, that tells you how hard you were laying them in. And it seems like Scott was pretty giving though. So that's pretty cool at the end of the day.
Yeah, he was cool. And like I said, man, you know, a lot of people shit on the Clique and they talk about how political they were, but I mean, we had great experiences with them. They were really nice to us. I mean, obviously we weren't any kind of threat to them. We were extras doing enhancement work, you know, but they were always real cool and nice to us.
You're a big fan of the Cuban persona, Ayo Chico.
Oh yeah, man. We were pumped whenever Razor Ramon showed up and he was doing the accent and you know, calling people monkey, thumping the toothpick. We dug it, and we liked him when he was the Diamond Stud, and I felt like we wanted to see more for him because we thought he had an amazing look and this, that, and the other thing. And we saw him live a couple times in Fayetteville, where we could drive to the arena and watch live events, and it was very cool to get the opportunity to work with him, especially right on the heels of that ladder match, because obviously that was very influential to myself and Jeff. That kind of set us on a path that we started going down.
Made you want to maybe pick up Spanish, seeing those cool little vignettes of him in Cuba and Miami and walking down the bodegas?
It certainly did. It made me think it would be maravilloso.
All right, I want to take a pause here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy to remind you about our friends over at GameTime. GameTime genuinely is one of my favorite partners that we have here on the podcast, because I do believe it is one of the most practical usages you're ever going to get out of an advertisement or a product on any podcast you listen to. What am I talking about? I'm talking about your one-stop shop to get last-minute ticket deals on any event that you want to see nearby. And when I say last minute, I mean literally last minute. You can be right up against the arena, touching the concrete, and purchase your ticket right as the event is about to get underway. GameTime is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, pro wrestling, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Now, you know that I'm going to be on the road this year trying to get those Springsteen tickets. He's back out there, which means John Alba is going to be back out there. All I got to do is monitor the GameTime app. I can wait until the very last minute to see what the best price is going to be. And I can see the view from my seat with their interactive map that allows me to guesstimate what the view is going to look like. Plus, they're all in prices. Show your total up front so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. They have exclusive flash deals and sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And with their zone deals, you pick the section and GameTime picks the seats for big-time savings. The GameTime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. So if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime's going to credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code HARDY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code HARDY for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's continue, Matt, because this is pretty amazing here in 1994. In a small period of time, your second taping after that, you're facing Crush, you're facing Owen Hart, you're facing The Undertaker. I mean, think about that. That's amazing. I mean, Crush, in my opinion, Crush was pretty damn underrated. But then to be in there with Owen Hart, who you and Jeff were huge fans of, and then The Undertaker, one of the most famous wrestlers in the history of history. Did you realize at the time, like, what you were being exposed to?
Well, actually, technically, that was The Underfaker. If you remember, there was
true. That's true. This was the Underfaker program, but it's still the idea that you're in an important situation.
Well, the match was put together by Undertaker, so he sat in on it. So that was very cool to see, kind of have his insight, because he obviously tried to make this whole angle and story work to the best of its ability. And Taker was whenever you would see Taker, he was so intimidating. He would come in those days like late to TV, black hat, long coat, usually have the BSK crew hanging right close to him, and just the fact that we never really got to interact with him, that was a very special moment, because I sat around with him for like an hour, as he was talking to Brian Lee about things, and also me as well, and interacting with him. And I also think that was a good opportunity to kind of like kick off a relationship where you could actually speak to him or say hello to him, whatever, because he was very much a very serious guy, and he didn't really interact with anybody other than his friends. So it was nice to kind of have that in by working a match with the guy who was playing the Undertaker, Brian Lee.
I wonder why they changed your name for this one, because you're Brian Hardy on this, even though
a mistake.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, because the day before you're Matt Hardy, so that's interesting. But you get to work with Owen, you get to work with the Undertaker. You come back in November, you get to work with IRS. So, which is amazing, as you pointed that out before in the
Yeah,
past, Matt, that,
right.
you get to work with the father-son combos. You got to work with both Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas, of course. So
Correct.
that's pretty fun to look at in hindsight, isn't it?
It is. And I was just going to say that there was a bump I took in that RS match. And sometimes I think I posted in that clip where he punches me and I take a hard bump on the apron, which, in case you didn't know this, John, is considered the hardest part of the ring.
I have
But
heard that.
but I actually land diagonally and I like hit my neck and I messed my neck up pretty bad. I remember like the 14-hour drive home. It was like brutal following that. And my neck like would barely move the next day. That was the first time I like got injured, within the course of a WWE match. It was that match against IRS. And I dug wrestling with him because he kept it real simple. He like gave me some stuff and he was very much a heel's heel. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you guys are getting good feedback, I assume, from the office?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they liked having us there. We would always go out of our way to try and like put in a big bump for each talent, which was going to make them look good. We wanted to sell their stuff really good. And then we would try and like put in some sort of flip or some sort of crash and burn or a dive or whatever we could do at that time to like add some excitement and energy to the match. So it just wasn't a short, boring squash match. And it got to the point that around that time, like people would say like, hey, I want the Hardy guy. If I have a match with an extra guy, I want one of the Hardys. Give me one of the Hardys. And we built a rep for ourselves, during the course of those few years in WWE, which was very cool.
Keep going here. On January 9th, 1995, you face Hakushi. I watched this match. It's a 1-minute match.
Yeah.
Holy shit, dude. He came in hot at you. Do you remember there ever being situations like that where even WWF guys just were super, super stiff or rough around the edges with you?
I remember the match, and looking back, it looked really good. And I don't think it was as physical as it appears on there. He was very good at what he did. That was the first scenario that I can really remember where I was in the ring with someone who did not speak English at all. You went through the mannerisms of the match and like what we're going to do. And then you had to, have it memorized. So that was pretty intimidating because he just did not speak English at all. So we went in there and we were keeping it short and sweet because it's one of those things. Like if you start trying to go longer and you're trying to change things on the fly, it's not going to work because there's a huge language issue.
Right. And you remember him being content with that match?
Yeah.
It was very quick.
It was quick and he was happy with it. He was very, very kind, very respectful afterwards. He's very grateful and appreciative of it. Very, very much. You could tell he was from Japan. He shared that culture, but just being very grateful and polite.
Was it weird? I mean, this is a time when Vince is like on commentary. Vince is your boss at this time that you're doing these freelance jobs for. He's on commentary. Did it ever feel like your boss was watching you from ringside?
Not really. I mean, I think everyone knew that, but he didn't have that intimidating aura then.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like to us, our boss was Chief J Strongbow because he was our contact that would call us and let us know. And like if the match wasn't good, he is the one that would read us the riot act. He is the one that we'd have a problem with. Like Vince was still so far up, and it's almost like he wasn't applying himself like he was the boss. You didn't see that as you did later. So it just, I don't think we thought very much about it. He was out there and, we knew that Vince was the guy who was the owner of the company that's kind of running shit. But like, I don't think people were really intimidated by it or thinking like, oh, we're really performing in front of the man. Like we were so far underneath Vince McMahon's care bracket. You know what I mean? Like we were guys that were there to do a job. Literally do a job and go out and make other talent look good. And I think Vince really was concerned with what we did.
Felt like he was one of the boys more so back then. And things would change not that long after. On January 10th, Kama defeats you, which is kind of cool looking back.
Yeah.
Tatanka the next day after that. Tatanka's still out there wrestling, so you can find him on the indies. And then this is so cool, man. June 26, 1995. It's you versus a young whippersnapper, a Connecticut blue blood, Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Look at that.
So crazy to think about that. In 1995, you guys have your first match.
Yeah.
Did you see it in him around that time that he was someone that could be a big deal there?
I remember whenever he was doing whenever he was at WCW, we thought he could be good. And I remember when he showed up doing this Hunter Hearst Helmsley gimmick in WWE, we thought he had potential. And I felt like he could be a very, very good pro wrestler and like be a big star. I mean, I don't think I would have ever foreseen him having the success that he ultimately ended up having, and especially like where he's landed now, considering he is more or less the guy who's running the company day in and day out.
A couple days later, you face another friend for the first time, the Road
Yeah.
Dogg.
Yeah.
Brian James. He's doing his stuff with Double J at the time. This match, you can find this match online. You try to do that, what you just alluded to earlier in the Nikolai Volkov match, where you try to run up to the top rope and then backflip over him. It's the Bryan Danielson spot you see in all his matches.
Right.
And you go to do it and you wipe out. You crash right into him. And eventually you get right back into the swing of things. You miss a 450 splash on those really difficult rings. It looks like it hurts like hell. And JR calls it 360. What do you remember about that match?
It's 450, JR, 450. I remember how it was just extraordinarily excruciating. Missing that 450, and I landed right here on my breastbone and it knocked the air out of me. I felt like my breastbone and maybe like where my ribs connect, that something was broken in there. It was brutal, and it was bruised for months following that.
Yeah. When you're an extra and you make a mistake, like how you made a mistake coming off the top and wiping out a bit, are you scared that like that's it, like it's over, like they saw you mess up and now you're not getting that call back? Was there ever that sense of feeling? Because I can tell you, man, like when I hosted on SNY for the first time, I had a 99% perfect show, but I choked on saying someone's name, and I was like, that's it, I'm never getting another look again. Like I got in my head. Does that ever cross your mind at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, it's a high pressure environment, especially because everybody, I would say 97% of the people that come in and do jobs want to have a job and make a career out of pro wrestling. Maybe not everybody does. Some people might be doing it just because it's like fun or a hobby, something they do in their spare time. But I mean, most people want to do it. So yeah, there's obviously a ton of pressure on you to go out there and perform and do your best each and every time. And you're always going to be very nervous if something goes awry, and it's pro wrestling. Things are going to go awry. It is what it is. So yeah, it's always a scenario where you're worried, like, oh man, I hope this doesn't reflect badly on me and I still get to keep coming. I hope they still like me.
Thankfully, they brought you back a few more times after that.
Yeah.
In fact, the next time you're brought back, it's against Radford on Action Zone.
Louis Spicoli.
An Action Zone in Portland, Maine, the Civic Center. Been there many a times. You get Owen Hart on November 21st, 1995. And then here's the big one, Matt. Ready? December 18th, Monday Night Raw in Newark, Delaware. A 4-minute and 36-second match against the Ringmaster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, this is a big deal because for those who don't know, the Ringmaster is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yeah. And this is his WWF in-ring debut. Matt, you hold the honor of having Stone Cold Steve Austin's first WWF match. That's pretty damn cool. He's getting a major push at this time. What kind of pressure came with that match for you?
It was a situation with a lot of pressure on him, because he was initially going to wrestle Rikishi, who was maybe the Sultan at that time. He was doing something different. He was supposed to have a somewhat competitive match, like 5 minutes, with someone else that was a contracted talent. And then whoever it was, I want to say it was Rikishi. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was Rikishi and whatever he was doing at that time. And he was hurt or wasn't able to wrestle. So they said, well, let's go with Hardy. He's good. We'll throw Hardy in there and he can do the gig. So it was cool too, having more time to go out and have more of a competitive match too.
Well, and his whole gimmick at the time is that he's a great wrestler. That is the gimmick. So that has to force you to up your game then and be in there with him where he's able to showcase that. How do you remember the reception coming down after that match?
Everybody seemed to be happy with it. I know watching back, there's a couple things where I wish I would have been more aggressive. And I think it was also very intimidating about getting aggressive with those guys. Cause like you can have this fear of like screwing up or making a miscue in a match. Right. But I think an even bigger fear is if like you hit one of these guys and you hurt them or you do something to them that hurts them, a guy who is a contracted important WWE wrestler. We kind of knew that was like, that's the point of no return. If some extra would hurt one of the contracted talent guys. So there's a couple things in there where I wish I would have been more aggressive, tune it up a little bit, and it would have been fine. But the feedback overall was good from that match.
I'd love to know what it was like working Steve back then versus working Steve in 2001, because we know he changed his style quite a bit after his neck injury. So what was the differences in that?
I mean, he was still he was very good. Still, I describe people a lot of times. You have guys who are very smooth and like you can kind of feel where they're moving and what they're doing, and you have some guys who work like wild animals. And I am a fan of both styles in all honesty. And Steve was very much like a wild animal where his moves weren't going to be very predictable. What he was going to do next, he was very unorthodox, very out there, but also very physical as well. It was a blast, and it was cool because like he knew he had time, and he just couldn't you can't just beat someone for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, and you look like shit if you beat them the whole hour and you haven't pinned them yet, right? So it had to be half-ass, somewhat competitive, and he was great to talk with. He treated me like I was someone who was on his level and the way we were going to work, the way we were going to do things. He gave me tons of spots. Obviously, he kind of had to because we had to have somewhat of a competitive match to go 4.5 minutes together, whatever the time was. So, yeah, it was great. I was going to say the only thing that really changed about him is that he was much more refined in what he was doing because he knew Stone Cold inside and out, and however he would act or whatever he wanted to do in the ring, it was instinctual at that point.
You know what's just so crazy about it is all the way up to this point, you guys have never once teamed together, you and Jeff. It's just you guys working singles, and that doesn't come until the middle of 96 that you guys are really starting to actually get a chance to work together.
Mm-hmm.
You work against the Smoking Guns, you work against the New Rockers. At one point, I think in 96, this is so crazy. So you guys are booked as the Jinx Brothers at one point. Is that correct?
Yes, against Ron and Don Harris.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget Chief J Strongbow. We told him, is there anything we could do to up our chances of getting a job, like doing this full time? Because that was our end goal, right? And I remember he said, like, well, do you have any other gimmicks you do? And I said, Jeff does this mask character, Will-O-The-Wisp. I said, and we've talked about maybe I could do a mask character with him. I said, and that might be something we could do, like, and that way it's not like we're guys who just do jobs. We also have this. And he said, okay, we'll bring those gimmicks next time. And he said, I'll get you on. I'll get you on. So we were really excited. Like, okay, well, if we go out and we have like a good competitive match and like we look good and maybe this is a chance, maybe we could do something as Will-O-The-Wisp and Ignis Fatusis. That was both of our names. And then, and I was like a red version of what Jeff was. And then I remember we got there, we were working those guys. It was a TV match, just a couple minutes, another squash. And we were both pretty frustrated with it. I remember we were kind of down. We're like, oh man, we're hoping to have, a better outing or like a better showing and have somewhat more of a competitive match against smaller guys, not two big giants that are going to, beat us down easily. So yeah, we did do that. And the reason behind that is he said, okay, well, let's take a look at this gimmick. Let's see what it looks like. Maybe it's something we could do something with down the road.
Eventually you start getting more and more and more and more bookings. When did it become apparent that you guys were on the verge of getting signed?
So there was a point, remember when Jake the Snake came back and was, I want to say, what year was it that Stone Cold won King of the Ring? Do you know off the top of your head?
So it was 96 into 97.
Yes, 96 into 97. So, there was that time where Jake the Snake was there, and that's where he kept the promo and said, Austin 316 says, I just whooped your ass, whatever. So then Jake, I don't know if he's at the point of about to retire, whatever. He starts becoming, Jake the Snake Roberts had a tryout as an agent, right? And he was doing agenting. He was a producer. So he was doing this, and like midway through 97, we came out and we had a tag match, like maybe against the Headbangers. We wrestled the Headbangers on WWE TV too. And we had a pretty good match with them because we actually worked with them in Smoky Mountain, and we kind of got along with them. We were closer to the same age. And Jake came out and said, okay, well, you guys are doing this. You're working with the Headbangers today. He said, you just guys keep doing what you're doing. He said, because they were talking about today in the meeting, like you're two guys they should sign down the road. They want to sign you eventually and do something with you down the road. And we're like, really? Really? And then we didn't hear anything for like 6 months. And we're like, oh, man, he was just like pulling on our leg. But apparently, I mean, it was accurate. And it was something that was discussed in the production meeting because we were teaming and we were tagging. We also had a match with Furnace and LaFon, which was a long, lengthy match, which ended up being pretty competitive. Jeff slipped off the top rope and fell directly down to the concrete floor, which made Christian Cage very happy because he hated us at that time. He was jealous that we were going to be signing contracts, and he wasn't, and we got booked so much. But yeah, Jake the Snake is the first one who ever gave us an inkling of hope and said that, no, they've said that they like you guys and they want to do something with you down the road because you're both really young talent that they think they could shape into future stars.
February 17th, 1997, you faced the Headbangers on Raw in Nashville. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it could be that. It was sometime in 97.
Yeah.
Sometime in 97 when Jake the Snake told us that. And then like we ended up getting booked in January of 98 for something a few weeks down the road. And they said, we need to talk to you when you get here. We specifically want to talk to you and your brother, Matt. And then that's when we got signed. That's where, Bruce Pritchard and JR sat us down and they offered us contracts. And it's crazy. We came back and said, yeah, we got contracts. They offered us a deal and we're going to do this. And we're going to do that. This developmental deal. And then I'll never forget, like Marty said, well, what about me and Jason? Did they say anything? I said, no, but I mean, Jeff and I, they did. And I remember how excited we were. And it was just such an awkward situation, just riding with them and going to the next town or whatever. But once again, we were doing a 3-day loop of TV and they sat us down and they told us, a few weeks ahead of time that they specifically wanted to talk to us when they came to this TV. So yeah, we were super excited, man. Couldn't sign that contract fast enough.
Just crazy looking through that time too, like January 98 into February 98. You guys, ASW in Greenville, North Carolina, February 11th, 98. You wrestle Sabu and Rob Van Dam.
Oh, yeah.
What a wild time that must have been, man. That's just so gnarly. Well, those are some great stories. I'm so glad that you shared those stories with us here today. I could listen to those all day long. That's like the magic, man. And what a special time in your life that led up to where you guys were going to get that opportunity. I mean, looking back on that, are you melancholy about those experiences? How do you look back on them?
I mean, I look back on them with fondness for sure. I mean, it was a great learning experience. I mean, it seemed like forever. It seemed like we weren't going to make it. And there were times we get frustrated. There were times we would definitely get frustrated about doing things. But like once we were offered a deal, and I'll never forget, like we couldn't sign it. They said, if you want to show this to a lawyer or whatever. And like, I think we had a buddy who we did indies with, and his dad said, well, I can't really recommend you sign this because it's very one-sided. We said, oh, we're going to sign it. We're definitely going to sign it because this is like our foot in the door. And then I'll never forget getting that first check, man, a check from WWE, just like a weekly guarantee of $300. And it was just such a big deal. I remember making a copy of that paycheck and framing it. So proud of it.
Do you still have it?
I do.
Wow. You should post that this week. Post a picture of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I will have to do that. I'll have to dig that up. I do have that. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Great stuff, Matt. Really great stuff. Thanks for sharing those stories here this week. We're glad that you guys, those two kids from Podunk, North Carolina, ended up breaking through and becoming the living legends that you are right now.
The tag team GOATs.
Man, just think about how many people you just inspired by telling those stories.
I mean, that's one thing that I tell people all the time. If they ask about, hey, I really want to wrestle. I mean, we get asked this question often, obviously. What do I need to do if I want to be a pro wrestler? Do you think I can achieve this dream? I was like, dude, if myself and my brother, two kids from the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, who had no connections, had no ends, had no business, no idea about the actual business or the way pro wrestling worked. If we can make it, then that's a good sign that anybody can make it if you work hard enough and you bust your ass.
Remember, you can be like the Hardys, but you will never be the Hardys.
That's right. Yeah. CC Young Bucks. Reach out and touch faith.
We want you to be part of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Head on over to advertisewithhardy.com. Promote your business to the extreme. Get your business, get your product out in front of thousands of listeners every single week on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We'd love for you to join our team.
Indeed.
Fun stuff, Matt. Anything else you want to add here?
No, this was a nice walk down memory lane, right? It's fun to go back and revisit these times. I really do look at those times with a lot of fondness, and we had so many great times. Myself, Jeff, Jason Arndt, Joy Abs, and Marty Garner, first name Sham, last name Payne, just traveling, like driving up and down the East Coast. And there were times, like even when we were in Texas, they flew us. There were a couple of times they flew us when we were with Stallion, and then they would fly us afterwards whenever we were just being booked through me. So it's cool that they had confidence in us and they saw something in us, and we continued to push forward to try and make something happen, and they continued to allow us the opportunity to try and achieve our dream. So it was great, man. I look back and I love the story, how we made it.
Well, we will be back with you next week right here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. The words have been spoken. We'll see you then.
Delete!